The rain was a hard, angry sound against the big windows of my bus. It was late, almost midnight on a Tuesday in October. Wind pushed against the bus, making it shake a little. Each time the automatic doors hissed open, cold, wet air rushed inside, smelling of rain and dark earth. I was tired. I wanted this shift to be over. My route was almost finished, and I had seen only a few passengers all night. The streets were shiny and black, like rivers of ink. The streetlights made long, blurry reflections on the wet pavement, and the world outside my driver's seat looked empty and lonely. I just wanted to get to the last stop, park the bus, and go home to my warm bed. Then I saw her. She was standing at the bus stop on the corner of Elm Street and 9th Avenue, a place where no one ever waited this late. She stood under a flickering streetlight, a small, dark shape against the storm. She didn't have an umbrella. Her clothes looked thin, not warm enough for a night like this. I slowed the bus, the brakes groaning in the wet. The doors opened with a familiar sigh. I waited for her to climb the steps, expecting to see a face dripping with rain, maybe a tired smile. But she was different. She moved without a sound, a shadow gliding into the bright light of the bus. I felt a sudden chill, a coldness that had nothing to do with the wind or the rain outside. She stepped up into the bus and the doors closed behind her, shutting out the noise of the storm. For a moment it was very quiet. I could only hear the low rumble of the engine. She looked at me, but her eyes seemed to see something far away, not me at all. Her face was pale, like old paper, and her hair was dark and wet, stuck to her skin. She wore a simple, dark dress, the kind my grandmother used to wear. It was out of place, from another time. "One ticket," I said, my voice sounding too loud in the stillness. She didn't speak. She just held out her hand to pay. In her open palm was a coin. It wasn't a modern coin, not like the ones I saw every day. It was heavy and dark, maybe silver, with a picture of a woman with strange hair. It felt cold when I took it from her, a deep cold that went right into my fingers. I had never seen a coin like it before. I should have told her I couldn't accept it, that it was too old. But something stopped me. I just nodded and dropped the strange coin into the fare box. It made a lonely clink as it fell. She turned away from me then, and walked down the aisle of the empty bus, her feet making no sound on the rubber floor. She chose a seat near the back, right by a window. The rain was running down the glass, making the dark world outside look wavy and strange. I watched her in the long mirror above my head. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't look out the window. She didn't look around the bus. She just stared straight ahead at the back of the empty seat in front of her. Most people, when they get on a bus this late, they look at their phones, or read a book, or try to sleep. But she did none of those things. Her stillness was unusual. It was a heavy, silent presence that filled the entire bus. I kept driving, following the familiar turns of Route 9. The windshield wipers swung back and forth, like a clock ticking away the minutes. Each time they cleared the glass, I saw the empty, wet street. Then the rain would cover it again. I tried to listen to the radio, but the static was bad because of the storm. All I could hear was the hum of the engine and the sound of the tires on the wet road, and the silence from the back of the bus. It was a silence that felt louder than any noise. I found myself looking in the mirror again and again, just to make sure she was still there. Every time I checked, she was exactly the same. Her posture never changed. Her head never turned. It was like she was a statue, a pale figure placed in the back of my bus. A strange feeling started to grow in my stomach, a little knot of worry. Why was she so quiet? Where was she going at this time of night, in this terrible storm? Elm Street and 9th was a strange place to get on, and the last stop was just the bus depot. There were no houses there, no apartments, nothing, just a big, empty parking lot where we left the buses for the night. The questions spun around in my head, making me feel more awake than I had all night. I passed Miller's Pond and the old library, landmarks I saw every single day. They looked different tonight, darker and more mysterious in the pouring rain. The bus felt colder now, much colder than before. I even checked the heater to make sure it was working. It was on full blast, but the air still felt icy. I looked in the mirror one more time. Her pale face seemed to float in the dim light of the bus. Her eyes were dark pools, and for a second I thought she was looking right at me, right into my own eyes through the mirror. But it must have been a trick of the light, a reflection on the glass. She was still just staring ahead, silent and unmoving. We were getting close to the end of the line. The depot was only 2 more blocks away. I started to think about what I would say to her. "This is the last stop, miss," I would have to tell her. I prepared myself for her to be confused, maybe even angry that I had brought her to an empty lot. I slowed the bus as I made the final turn into the depot's long driveway. The big metal gates were open, waiting for me. The rain had softened a little, turning into a light drizzle. The only sounds were the engine and the soft tap-tap-tap of the rain on the roof. It was time. I had to tell my last passenger that her journey was over. I pulled the bus into its designated parking spot, number 42. I shut off the engine. The sudden silence was deep and complete. All the lights on the dashboard went dark. The only light came from the big floodlights in the parking lot, which cast long, strange shadows. I took a deep breath and turned in my seat. "Miss," I started to say, my voice sounding small in the quiet bus. "This is the end of the route. You'll have to get off here." I waited for her to stand up, to walk toward the front doors. I expected to see her pale face again, to see those dark, empty eyes. But there was nothing. The back of the bus was completely empty. My heart started to beat fast. I stood up and walked down the aisle, my own footsteps suddenly loud on the floor. I looked at the seat where she had been sitting. It was empty. I looked under it. Nothing. I checked all the other seats one by one, my confusion turning into a cold, creeping fear. How could she be gone? I didn't hear the doors open. I didn't hear any footsteps. She couldn't have just disappeared. I walked to the back door and checked the lock. It was secure. She couldn't have opened it without me hearing the loud buzz it always made. It was impossible. She was just gone. I stood there for a long time, in the middle of the empty bus, feeling a chill run down my spine. The bus felt colder than ever before. I thought about the strange old coin she had given me. I thought about her silent, still presence. It didn't make any sense. I must have been tired, I told myself. Maybe she got off at the last stop before the depot and I didn't notice. But I knew that wasn't true. I would have noticed. I would have seen her walk past me to get to the door. I walked back to the front, my mind racing. I gathered my things, locked the bus, and stepped out into the damp night air. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had not been alone on that final part of the journey. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about the woman. The whole thing felt like a strange dream. At the depot, while waiting for my shift to start, I saw Frank, one of the older drivers. He had been driving the city routes for 30 years. I decided to tell him what happened. "Frank," I said, trying to sound casual, "you ever had a strange passenger on Route 9, late at night?" He looked at me over the top of his coffee cup, his eyes thoughtful. "You mean the lady in the old dress?" he asked, his voice low. "The quiet one who gets on at Elm and 9th when it's storming?" A shiver went through me. "Yes," I said, "that's her. She was on my bus last night, paid with a weird old coin." Frank shook his head slowly. He put his coffee down and leaned in closer. "Son, you didn't have a passenger last night," he said. "That woman, she died a long time ago, more than 50 years now. There was a bad accident on a stormy night, right on that corner. A bus crash. She was the only one who didn't survive." I stared at him, my mouth suddenly dry. It couldn't be true. It was just a story, one of those ghost tales old-timers like to tell new drivers to scare them. "No," I said, shaking my head. "She was real. I saw her. She was on my bus." Frank just gave me a sad look. "Every few years someone sees her, always on a stormy night. She's just trying to finish her ride home." I didn't believe him. I couldn't. She was too real. The cold coin, her pale face, the weight of her presence in the back of the bus. I had to prove it. "The cameras," I said, my voice rising. "The security cameras on the bus will show her. They record everything." I went straight to the security office and asked to see the footage from my bus from last night. The security officer looked bored, but he pulled up the video file for me. He fast-forwarded to the part where I stopped at Elm and 9th. My heart pounded in my chest. I was about to prove Frank wrong. I was about to prove I wasn't crazy. The video played on the screen. I saw my bus pull up to the corner. I saw the doors hiss open. I watched myself turn and say, "1 ticket." But I was talking to an empty doorway. There was no one there. On the screen, I saw myself take an imaginary coin from the air and drop it into the fare box. Then I watched myself drive, talking and looking into the rearview mirror, my eyes focused on an empty seat in the back of a completely empty bus. The footage showed me driving alone, talking to no one, for the entire last part of the route. I was the only person on the bus. The woman was never there at all.